Do it. They cannot do this without the understanding of the zodiac, which is this. Zodiacus is the ancient name of the term zodiac. Zodiacus implies the first woman, who is this. Womb man. We are man with a womb. That's who we are. No spirit can enter this plane without the agreement of a womb man. Period. We are the vehicle. We have a covenant with the cosmos where we agree to bring those spirits, which we call monads, from the astral plane and summon them to this physical plane. And it is only through the womb man that they can leave, exit, and then reposition themselves in another plane. All of this relevant to all law. Now, this is why when the brother talked about getting our land back, I know this issue very well. I fight this fight every day on top of all my other duties and responsibilities and everything else that I do. So when we talk about justice returns under the age of Aquarius, this is why when we walk into a courtroom and we understand that the court, as I explained to a class just recently, a court is also a corporation. They don't hide that from you. They put it right on the seal, right behind the judge. And they tell you that this court was incorporated in 1878, whatever it is. This court was incorporated. And what words do they use? Founded. So when you see the word founded and you see the word established in, it already tells you that they're a corporation. Understand? And anybody who owns a corporation does what? Own a slave. Because a corporation is a slave holder. Understand? Now, let's talk about the issues that come up in court. How am I with time, Noah? All right. The point I want to make real quick relative to going to court and getting land back and all these issues and all these injustices that have been done to us. When we participate in organizations that take us off our square, that adds to the chaos and the confusion. So it's better not to join anything at all and just be yourself if you're not going to be a Moor. But even if you're going to be a Moor, understand that sovereignty is an individual thing. Don't go into court talking about I belong to such and such organization. And be clear about that, because as soon as you say an association, an organization, a business, a firm, a corporation, you're talking about slavery. And they love that language because you're putting yourself right in their jurisdiction as soon as you say it. But you go in there and say, I am. Well, what organization do you belong to? Well, none. They do not know how to deal with you. But as soon as you say corporation, because they're a corporation and they speak the corporate language and they have corporate policy, they'll love you to say that. So the first thing they're going to do is, how are we going to get some money? All right? Because that's the name of the game, money. Now, let's talk about who they are, why they exist, these courts. First of all, we know they're not really courts. We know they're colorable. They know they're colorable. They have to be colorable because they're dealing with colorable people, right? If we choose not to be colorable, we don't belong in there. So, the court is this. Just like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, just like the Bar Association, just like the United States of America, they are this. They are a private nonprofit corporation. If you get some mail that belongs to me, do you go and show up and say you're me? No, you can't do that. So if a private nonprofit corporation sends you a document and you have no contract with them, why should you go up and debate the contract? Because if you don't have a contract, right? If you don't have a contract, you don't have a contract. It's as simple as that. You don't need to go there and say all that. Just say, because here's my status and this and that and the other, right? Don't go in there trying to debate whether you owe money on the contract or not. The bill was too high and all that. And I'm not saying that because of what you said. Understand that. If you don't have the contract, why are you discussing the bill? It doesn't make sense, does it? First, you have to have a contract. So the first thing you need to understand when you walk in there, I don't care what the issue is. Here's the question. And I write things down, specific things I write down, because when I write them down, I'm spelling. Understand? Do we have a contract? If I rescind my birth certificate, do I agree to belong to the corporate ward state that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which is a private nonprofit corporation? If I don't have a birth certificate with you, what agreement do we have that you should summon me to answer anything? Right? If I don't have an agreement with the parking authority, which I don't, do they have the right to send me a bill saying that I owe them for a parking ticket? It's ludicrous. Now, the thing to say is, if you don't have the contract, you have certain rights, and you need to exercise those rights. And there are codes even that are there, and laws that are there to protect you if you don't have a contract with somebody and they're trying to make you adhere to a contract. I don't care what kind of contract it is. If you don't have a driver's license and they pull you over, the first thing you need to say is, I don't have a contract. They may still give you the ticket, but understand that if there are other things, which I already explained in the language of silence, which because we are amongst non-Moors tonight, I will not show you. However, there's a language of silence that you can speak to these people and they will not bother you. You can trust me on that. However, if you are not comfortable and you happen to get off your square and you get the ticket and you have to go to court, that's the first thing you have to say. I don't have a contract. And all of these courts, because they are corporations, the only type of policy they can deal with is contract policy, not contract law, contract policy. So the first thing you must ask is what? Do we have a contract? And if the answer is no, then I'm here under threat, duress, and coercion. You are violating my rights. It's as simple as that. You have no other reason to be there. Does that make sense? Okay. If the state comes in and says, you're not treating your children right and we want to take them, right? The first thing you have to say is, state, do I have a contract that says I gave my children to you? Did I, at what point, produce the contract? Produce the contract. If you send me a bill, and understand that if you belong to the corporate board state, you can't make these arguments because you do have a contract, which is the birth certificate, which is the marriage license, which a marriage license is your contract, is the woman's contract with the state and the man's contract with the state. It's not a contract between the man and the woman. Never was, never will be. Unless you have a prenuptial agreement or something else, you don't have a marriage contract with the one you think you love. You have a contract with somebody else who becomes a third party to your life, always, till you rescind the contract. All right? Because that's not how you get married. Marriage is under all law. All right? And then what you're responsible to do is to place the oath that you take between the two of you on the public record. Where? Where do you place information on the public record? Do you know? With the county. The counties are ancient. They belong to us. They belong to us. Our ancestors named the counties. Our ancestors formed the counties. Our ancestors set up the government of the counties, and the counties operate according to common law. Did y'all know that? The counties belong to us. So let me write this for you. How many of you think you live in Philadelphia County? For those who, okay. Okay. All right. when here we go. You're right. You don't know. I know you're about to tell us that, right? See that? Do you recognize that there's a difference between the two? There's a difference between Philadelphia County, which our ancestors set up with certain geographical boundaries, and that corporate, nonprofit corporation that calls itself the County of Philadelphia. It is a corporation chartered to conduct business and commerce and trade and all that within the geographical boundary of Philadelphia County. They are two different things. They're two different things. So when you see documents, pay attention, because all documents that you get don't have County of Philadelphia on them. And you know the difference between the two, because if you get documents from the County of Philadelphia, you know that you're receiving correspondence from a corporation. Do you understand? And if you're receiving correspondence from a corporation, the first question you must ask is, do we have a contract? Now, if you receive correspondence from the county, that's common law. You have the responsibility to respond and adhere to that, because guess what? You are a part and parcel of that county. Our ancestors set up these geographical boundaries for us, all right? Now, likewise, with any other county or city, pay attention to this one little word. It's a very dangerous word. I'm going to tell you, and I tell people in my class, when that word shows up, you're in trouble. The reason is because most of you prior to tonight, you didn't understand that there was a difference in when they use that little word of. But trust me, there's a difference between whether you're dealing with government or corporation. Government or corporation. You have to know the difference. And if you don't know the difference between these things, they're going to have you swinging left and right in the dark and hitting nothing. Okay? I want to explain to you that when you're dealing in contracts, your status in the contract is very important. How do you establish your presence in a contract so that you are protected? Does anybody know how to do that? Because we're confronted with contracts all the time. And when we do not adhere to certain terms and conditions of the contract, which we did not understand from the very beginning, then we're dragged into court to answer for all kinds of claims and allegations on behalf of the corporation, and we don't even understand why we're there. We think, for the most part, the majority of us, and prior to tonight, you get a summons to appear in court. I don't care whether that's a civil action or a criminal action. You on the defensive because you feel that inherently maybe I have done something that warrants these allegations, even if you know for a fact that you're innocent. Because the way that corporate system operates, you are not innocent until proven guilty. You are guilty until proven innocent. And the reason is because as some of these state sovereignty people would have you believe, the United States has declared war on the people. We're in a state of martial law. Well, of course you are. If the people have agreed to be corporate wards of a state that's a private nonprofit corporation, and the government operates according to sovereignty, and you agree not to be sovereign, then what have you done? You've abandoned your government. The only thing the government can do is declare war on you. That's why you walk into a military tribunal when you walk into these courtrooms. That's why they have a military flag, which is a USA flag with the gold fringe, that lets you know you're in a military tribunal. And the reason is because you've agreed not to be sovereign. So the only way they can deal with you is in a military fashion. Y'all understand that? Okay. So how to protect yourself when you're dealing in, the first thing, I'm not going to really get into details of explaining to you how to stand on your square and how to be in court and all that. The first thing you must understand is how to exist in contracts. Because if you understand how to exist in contracts, that will significantly reduce your ever having to go to court, to the courtroom. okay, to the courtroom. If you understand how to deal in contracts, because all these corporations do is deal in contracts, and all the these court systems, let me say that, do is deal in contracts. So if you're not familiar with the contracts, and the majority of their contracts are these. Adhesion contracts. Look in the law dictionary and look up the word adhesion. And what you're going to find is that an adhesion contract is a type of contract where there are terms and conditions that are a part of the contract of which you are not aware. And every time you sign a birth certificate, there's the balance of that contract is somewhere. Whenever you sign for a driver's license, the balance of that contract is somewhere. You don't have it, you've never seen it, but it does exist. And this is why they have the authority to issue you a ticket for all these different things and violations, because there's a contract somewhere that you signed and you have not reserved your rights. So if you don't reserve your rights are considered waived upon signing of the contract, which means that you know, understand, and agree that there's an adhesion going on, and you don't care, or you otherwise are not aware. They don't care. They've got you to sign. How do you go back now and correct the fact that you signed all these adhesion contracts everywhere all your life? You've signed them. I know you have, because I have too. And now's the time for you to get back into your proper person so you can correct those contracts and get out of the ones you don't want to have, and the ones you choose to have, you can exist under your own terms and conditions. That's the most important part. That's long before you get to going to court. Because you can go to court all day long, but guess what? Unless you correct the problem, the root of the problem, which is not knowing how to exist in contracts, you'll constantly go to court, and that's a waste of your time. I'm sure you have many more productive things to do than to keep showing up in court, making special appearance in propria persona, sui juris, and stating your status for the record. Okay? Now, the first thing you need to do is contact. Contact those entities with whom you have a contract and tell them that in no uncertain terms you want to correct or otherwise change or revise the terms and conditions of your contract. You have the right to do that, and you must. All right? If you're going to have the contracts, exist in those contracts under your own terms and conditions. Just because somebody hands you an application and that application has pretty little boxes and everything on it, if there's categories up there that don't apply to you, don't fill it out. Add a box that applies to you. And then when we take people to the Social Security Administration to get their name corrected on their Social Security card, this is what happens. There's a section on there for race, okay? Okay, that's just some of them. They may have a few more. I don't remember, okay? Do any of those boxes apply to you? Not even the one other. It does not apply to you. So what do? You are a Moor. Tell them who you are. If you don't, and you put any other category up there, you have signed it and you have made a contract with them, and they're going to hold you to that contract. And then if you go back and try to change the contract, they'll say, well, they won't tell you in these words. They'll say, well, we can't do that. Well, why can't they do it? It's because you didn't reserve your rights, but guess what? They reserved all of theirs. And they have the right to not change the contract just because you want to. They reserve that right. Now, and the only way you can get out of it is step out of that corporate board status and deal with them in propria persona sui juris, which means in my proper person of my own right, okay, and go back and correct those contracts. That's the first thing you got to do. The Uniform Commercial Code. Whether you're sovereign or whether you're not, you're dealing in commerce. And when you're dealing in commerce, there's an agreement, a uniform agreement in this country, not this nation, this country, that has a standard that protects people in their contracting, because you have the right to contract. Even in the treaty, you have the right to trade. You have the right to trade being without interference from any other third party. Okay? You have the right to trade under your own terms and conditions. All right? Now, when you waive that right, and they don't tell you that you have waived the right, they're exercising their rights under the Uniform Commercial Code. And you're not. So go and look up the Uniform Commercial Code and look up those sections that apply to reserving your rights. I would tell you what those sections are tonight, but for me to just tell you does not help you. It only helps you if you go look it up and you see it for yourself. Am I right, Fami Arasante? Because they did that, and now they understand how to sign documents, not just because I gave some instruction on certain things. They've seen the verbiage in those books, and they've seen how it applies and how it has been used in the Supreme Court cases and all the treaty law that applies to these things. It's much better for you to go find it for yourself. So that's why I just give you that right there. The other part is this. You see my favorite word in there? Of. The United States Code of the Laws. The United States Code of the Laws is the code that's used by all of the United States district courts and federal court. This is what they use. So if you go into federal court, you must cite the United States Code that applies to the violations that are made against you. That's all you need to do, because they understand treaty and understand. I've been there so many times discussing treaty and constitution and all those things like that. And trust me, when I go to court, they put everybody out the courtroom. And they post officers at the door on the inside and the outside because they don't want people to hear what I have to say. And then they come up with all these different little reasons and whatever and get me out of there because they don't want me in there. Because I know too much. And I will speak. So the United States Code of the Laws has also the different codes and the procedures, the federal rules of civil procedure in there. All of the criminal code, because understand, if there's a parking ticket, what they're saying is that we're suing you for a criminal offense. Did y'all know that? If there's a speeding ticket, that's a criminal offense. They're suing you in a criminal court. Do y'all understand that? They're filing criminal charges against you for something so simple. All right? If you agree to pay a tax bill and then you don't pay it, like with the Internal Revenue Service, because understand they're the Internal Revenue Service, they're a private, nonprofit corporation. There are 22 of them all around the country, and they compete for your business. They compete. They don't share information, and they collect money they're in the business of collecting money on behalf of the United States Treasury. That's their job. Doesn't mean you have to use them, but if you have a contract with them, which you sign your W-4, right? You sign a 1040 or 1040A or whatever, any of those other forms, you signed them. That's voluntary. Did you know your signature is voluntary? You can fill out the form and don't sign it and send it in. And even if you claim on there that you say you owe them money, as long as you don't sign it, you have not, right, entered into a contract. You've given them all the information, but you have not entered into a contract which binds you. Do you understand? If you send the information, you have filed, and that's all that you're required to do. They don't say you're required to sign. They say, please sign. There's a difference. Please sign. Why? Please sign so we can come after you and take everything you got. Okay? So when you look up the United States Code of the Laws, you're going to find all kinds of things in there, because municipalities who have codes and regulations and all those things and the state statutes and all that, all of them fall up under the jurisdiction of the United States Code of the Laws. Because no municipality, no county, borough, township, city, state can make a law that's outside the boundaries of federal law. They must all adhere to federal law. But if you agree, if they come up with a policy and you agree and enter into a contract to participate and be a part of that policy, then when you try to go to the federal court for protection, the federal court, they're not going to tell you in words they'll dismiss the case, but the reason they're dismissing the cases is because somewhere along the line you signed a contract that behind your back has been produced and put into the court record. And what I always tell people to do is to go down to the file room and get a copy of the docket sheet and get a copy of your file of everything that's ever been put on the record concerning you. And then you go back and correct those things and say, produce the contract or take it out the file. You have to file your paperwork, your motion to the court, and say that these things were filed in violation of whatever code applies, of whatever UCC paragraph that applies. These things are in violation of UCC ... United States Code ... You petition the court to have them removed from your record. Do you understand how simple this is? Not hard. This is not rocket science. This is what it takes is your perseverance to follow through the steps and get this thing done. Because if you don't do it, certainly it's going to remain on your record. And guess what? No matter how long you live, you can always they always go back and trace something on your record back to you. I don't care if you correct your name or anything like that, which I tell people, even when you correct your name, what we have people stop using your social security number as a trade number. That's one of the main things you have to do. Stop using that social security number. The Social Security Administration tells you, do not give your social security number to anyone. And anyone that you choose to give it to, you have the right to demand, one, how they're going to use it. And you have, under certain terms and conditions, to deny them to use it certain ways. For example, if you got something on your credit report, as Arsante, we helped him resolve those issues. How did they get on there? Did you authorize that credit reporting company to send, to receive any information? Do you have a contract with them? Do you have a contract with J.C. Penney, who you applied for the application? Did you tell them as a part of your contract that they could check your credit record? Is that part of the contract? The answer is no. That's not part of the contract, and they violated UCC and the United States Code by contacting that credit reporting bureau to get any information on you. And then the credit reporting bureau has violated UCC and the code of the laws to send any information relative to you because you did not explicitly authorize them to do so. So guess what? They have done damage to you, and then guess what? You have the right to sue for damages. Am I right? Okay, so contracts and these courts, that's the only thing you're dealing with is contracts. Contracts, and never forget that. I'm going to write it down. Because I'm ready to close and open the floor for questions, and I just want to leave you with that word, contracts, and remember how to exist in contracts. Islam.